Broadcasting from our studio in Boston, Solutions Review is proud to showcase Amplitude in the Solution Spotlight, an inside look at enterprise technologies.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to the Solution Spotlight featuring Amplitude and focused on growth stack consolidation to reduce costs and increase performance. One of the top 5 management imperatives in high-performance organizations is developing an optimal strategy that balances cost consolidation without sacrificing growth. In fact, the need to drive revenue growth has never been greater. Your challenge? Reduce software spend and drive incremental growth. So today, we're offering up a discussion on how to assemble a growth stack designed to minimize costs and increase performance. And we hope you'll leave this session with some new ideas on how you can increase the ROI of existing investments and open up options to replace tools you're looking to sunset. And to walk us through the presentation today is Ted Sfikas, Field Chief Technology Officer from Amplitude. Ted, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Doug. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I'm glad you're here because we have been tracking Amplitude at Solutions Review for a while, and you guys have really shown a great amount of growth, and you're working with some really innovative companies. And so an event like this for us is always good to be able to present to our audience and share best practices. And I know you actually are coming at it from a relatively new position. You started there only 6 months or so ago, but you've got a fairly illustrious career. Can you give us a little bit of a replay of your journey and kind of what you see as the opportunity at Amplitude?
Yeah, absolutely, Doug. It has been a pretty exciting career for me. I started off engineering and in software architecture, and I learned all about data and how it works, how it moves, all the different modalities in building systems for my organization. And then I moved to some of the big companies like Hewlett-Packard and Computer Associates, and I got to know enterprise software at its finest, selling dozens and dozens of products that all are supposed to work together, and cost obviously being a big factor. I was there when software as a service turned the industry on its head. I still remember sliding blades into the data center racks back in the day, and those days are over. Now it's operating over the web. And then circa, the mid 2010s, I pursued my passion. I went after digital marketing and ad tech. I found that technology to be the most interesting, the most sophisticated as well, and the most in need of regulation, which happened in 2018 with the rise of GDPR and the subsequent California Consumer Privacy Act here in the United States. And that led me to Amplitude because the tools that we had assembled, as you'll see later in my presentation, they're in the thousands. It's costing quite a bit. There's a lot of easy ways to fix that problem. I think now in 2024, the reason I joined Amplitude was because I believe they're the missing piece, the gap that we've always had in tech, where it's important to learn about your data first and not be so focused on getting it out to the ether, out to the ecosystem to drive value. Before you do that, understand your data before you automate. So Amplitude gives us that capability, and I'm happy to lead the company into that realm in digital marketing. So far, so good.
Yeah, great. It's an amazing time. I mean, we're tickled by the way enterprise technology kind of always evolves and gets more interesting just when you think it can't. So I'm going to get out of the way, but before I do, I'm going to let everybody know how it's going to go down. So I'm going to hand it to Ted. Ted is going to spin through some of the presentation. Lots of interesting stuff here. I was looking at it a little bit earlier, and you'll want to pay attention to everything Ted has to say. But then I'm going to jump back in after, and I'm certainly going to have some questions. We've gathered up some questions through social media, and we will have a nice Q&A. But for now, Ted, I'm going to hand the ball to you and let you run with it, and I'll catch up with you on the last slide.
Fantastic. Thanks, Doug. Let's start with the agenda. I'm going to go through the current state and background of the data industry in general. Many of you in the audience probably have a different point of view on what data means to you. So we'll talk about, in particular, the first party data strategy that's surfaced in recent times and become absolutely important, no matter what vertical you're in. We'll talk about the new approach that we're promoting here at Amplitude, and that strategy is shared by many of our partners. Some of the pros and cons that you as a business will likely realize as you pursue a strategy similar to what I'll be talking about today. And on that point, I'll give you some results and outcomes that we've seen here in Amplitude from some of our clients that have successfully designed the important pieces of this strategy and seen the outcomes work for the business quite well. And then we'll hit that Q&A, as Doug said. So let's get started. The current state. This is such a common slide. I've seen it thousands of times in the last 10 years throughout my digital marketing and ad tech career. The concept of data living in silos. Nowadays, I see a lot of really good data in warehouses and data clouds that have business intelligence solutions snapped onto it. I see a lot of really interesting engagement in customer experience, customer analytics data in the marketing databases. And then, of course, there's our friendly CRM, who's been around for a very long time, collecting data that we wouldn't otherwise get in the digital realm. So off-site, offline data, as well as online and real-time data. And all of it is important to understand the person, the customer, the client that you're working with. And so that's what our growth strategy in the middle struggles with, acquiring this data, assembling it, interpreting it, and then applying business use cases to it that make sense for the business, typically in acquisition, retention, and monetization. It's not just about who you've collected data on. How did you do it? How much did it cost? Is it worth it? Acquisition. How do we hold on to that client? What will it take? I mean, it's not just about coupons and promotions. It's about the experience in this case. So that deals with a lot of how you present your products to them in that strategy. And then finally, what are they worth? Should we be advertising to them? Should we be personalizing? In what way? Every person's a snowflake, and every person will want a different approach to be connected to your brand. So while growth is obviously a unified goal throughout the enterprise, the data became naturally siloed because different business units had to deal with the same person in different ways. And that's completely understandable. One problem that occurred in the last 15 years, this is the fun part, right? 14,106 different technologies, according to Scott Brinker from chiefmartech.com, whom I love following. He keeps track of this stuff. And this, he calls it the Lumascape, shows all of the options that we have as enterprises and organizations today. Whether, no matter how big or small you are, you're going to use technology to achieve your business goals in acquisition, retention, and monetization. The problem is there's too many of them. And as Doug alluded to earlier in the opening of this presentation, it's in dire need of consolidation and normalization, especially in these economic times. And so let's talk about those. It's not just the economy. We all know about the interest rates making money really expensive. So we have to take a much sharper view on what we're pursuing in our strategy and how we're going to go to market with our products. But the consumer has also changed, right? So consumers nowadays, after the pandemic, everything was going great. Then we got sick and suddenly people stopped going out. And so the digital strategy that we had not only became the most important, it was the only one for a while. I personally saw a lot of digital transformation strategies accelerate anywhere from 3 to 5 years overnight with some of our brands. And they were ready for it in a lot of ways, but it caught them off guard too, how much they needed to do. So this really shone a spotlight, having the consumer basically consume products, information, and have the experience through their phones at home all the time. Loyalty and price became paramount in maintaining market share for brands during this time and continues to do so. McKinsey has quoted the consumer nowadays and labeled them as the zero consumer. They have zero patience. They have zero loyalty if you don't present them with an omni-channel experience that works for them. And that leads to personalization. That's the name of the game. You'll find it in every brochure you get from Accenture or Publicis or all the big market movers that understand this market. Personalizing to the consumer has become table stakes. And let's not forget about AI, right? This is the latest and greatest technology movement. It seems like every brand is building AI and machine learning into their products. And it's become expected. Things simply work. We move a lot faster now. And so the rise of AI has really changed how we go to market as well. And that leads us to the differences throughout the regions. How you choose your strategy in Europe is going to be a lot different than in the United States. Prices are different. And you can see it on the map I have in the corner there. So data residency rules and privacy regulations have really shown that spotlight on how it's important to have an international strategy should your brand expand throughout the globe. So a lot has changed, a lot of technology. What's the solution? Well, we look at it here as Amplitude as unifying the business through not only the strategy, but also through data. We think that a lot of the normalization benefits that you'll get will come when you see data as an independent layer between all of your technology assets. But you don't stop there. It's important more than ever to measure your efforts. In the past, when I first joined digital marketing, we would just fire hose data over to Google and Meta and cross our fingers and hope that our return on ad spend went up and to the right. And it usually did. But nowadays, with a multi-channel and omni-channel environment, it's not so much did you achieve the standard ROAS for your company, it's could you have done better in another channel. So in step one, we understand that in order to unify the business, we first have to unify the data. And that means having an agile architecture, something that's ready to change. I like to say that data is chaos. It's always changing, and you have to be connected to the data in real time to achieve that. While you're doing that, it must be secured and compliant. And yes, the days of throwing spreadsheets across the table and having 16 meetings before deciding on an audience that you want to market to are over. It's automation. If you don't have automation built into your data assets, you're going to be 10th or 11th to market, where your competitors are taking away a piece of the pie. So once we see the technology unified, we then start to see, in my experience, the process that our clients have. That obviously becomes part and parcel with a unified technology center, whether that means you've set up a data center of excellence or simply as a enterprise-wide service utility that everybody's using, similar to a CRM. You'll have a distinct processes structured for each team that are controlled and audited. Data is no longer something that should be free-flowing through the enterprise. It needs to be controlled. So not only the single source of truth, but the single point of control. And so that will change your business strategies. Get ready. We've already seen a few. The latest and greatest trend now is retail media networks instead of the usual walled gardens. Your strategy will change. For the first time in, I think, 10 years, over a decade, it's been reported that Meta and Google don't comprise more than 50% of a marketing budget anymore. That is unusual, and that's because of the rise of brands taking control of their data, using their own digital properties as the prime source to do analytics as well as to do personalization upon. And that in turn has led to, it seems like every brand's becoming a publisher now. Retail media networks, you see it on CVS, on Best Buy, on Disney. You can advertise to me while I'm watching Star Wars. All of that has been a result of brands taking control of their first party owned and operated data. And last but not least, this is the part that we forget. We don't want to do the science on it. We just want to make money. But we have to understand where the opportunity is And with AI, if we do correct measurement and we help the algorithms learn faster, we can understand where the opportunity will be. So it's not just about hitting your KPIs. That's the old way of doing things. Let's have a never-ending OKR, like a racetrack that you see in the background. You're always in a race. You're never going to be in the pole position at all times, but that's okay. That's why you measure. You understand where you are at the point in time and use those industry metrics to measure yourself, but also take note of the operational ROI that you can gain from normalizing your tech stack. So what's the new approach now that we know what the solution looks like? With Amplitude, you'll find a lot of similarities. Obviously, I'm promoting my platform at Amplitude because I have seen it work in conjunction with a well thought out and architected environment. But you want to bring these teams together and you want to realize the goal of having data be controlled as an independent entity, not dependent on you buying a specific warehouse or a data cloud or a personalization tool. Data should be managed just like software as a service. And so when you have an analytics platform that immediately receives data from all of the sources that you're connected to, that your consumers are connected to, you'll be able to process that data, understand it, analyze it, experiment and test with it to make sure that it's fit for use, and then move it on to the spokes of that hub. Move it on to IT. If legal needs it for data subject access requests, move it on to legal. The idea here is to trust the technology that is central to collecting and producing the personas that drive your business. If you can't trust it because it's in silos, and that's because it has the possibility to be duplicate, stale, otherwise incorrect, that's why you centralize. So this is the first order of business. Have your data management platform and your analytics platform working in tandem and have the ability to quickly move that blueprint of data to applications such as experimentation, forming audiences for marketing, and then fueling the rest of the stack. That's the idea here. And if you can do that, you'll trust your data and you can move forward with the fun stuff that we'll talk about next. So you're going to see, stepping away from product names, data as a service, managing that independently, you're going to have a lot of capabilities, as you see in this slide here. While Amplitude can manage analytics, feature flagging for product, and PLG, product-led growth strategies, that's fantastic. Experimentation and measurement is all part of the stack. But it's not only about that. The rest of your stack, the data collection pipelines, must be secured. They must be compliant with the data privacy laws in your region. So data residency and data privacy become paramount to understanding and working with your InfoSec departments even before you get started. To stay agile, to stay at the most cost-effective place for your organization, you need to take integrations very, very seriously. The latest fad is reverse ETL, which means simply the data in your warehouse can actually be activated, and tools and platforms like Amplitude can fuel the warehouse if that's the scenario you choose from. We recently went to market with warehouse native capabilities with Snowflake. That gives us the ability to form what we call a composable customer data platform for our clients who choose to go down that route for cost efficiency and for data accuracy. So whether you're collecting profiles or audiences in Amplitude or a warehouse or whichever product CDP you choose, these capabilities are part of that service that we're talking about. So why does Amplitude work? Why does analytics and product analytics in general work together? I just mentioned the composable customer data platform. The latest trend is to have engineers decompose these massive stacks that are not flexible and agile that you spend millions of dollars for, and decompose them down to the units that matter, and making your own selections and optimizing your budget and your spend because of that decomposition. Our position here at Amplitude is that there's a couple of things that should not be decomposed, and that is the collection of data to form audiences and the ability to experiment upon that. If you keep those two together in the same interface, your time to market will be much more rapid than if you're jostling between 3 or 4 different tools. And so when they share that same data blueprint, your product-led growth strategy, that's all dependent on your product and engineering team to make the experience better on your app, on your website, are completely unified with your marketing team. And why shouldn't they be? They help each other. It's the same data. As the product team learns what causes your consumers to spend more time with your business, either through an app or a website, or perhaps they learn what drives a transaction to be more rapid and more monetized for your business, that information's gold. That's what should be creating audiences for your marketing team to make decisions about whom and where to advertise that you can see on the right-hand side. It's not just about sending it to Google and getting clicks and coming back and patting ourselves on the back. It's about understanding what is the right channel today and next week based on the experiment I just ran. This is why Amplitude works rapidly in favor for our clients, and it can for companies that choose this portion of the strategy to be unified as well. But again, it's not the only strategic area you're going to have to think of. Data clouds are here to stay. We've seen Azure, AWS, Snowflake, Databricks. It seems like everyone has one or more of these data clouds. And why? It does act as a single source of truth. A lot of the times I'll walk into an organization and they've already established the means to unify data. It's just sitting in their warehouse and unable to be connected to consumers on their apps in real time. And that's because warehouses don't have connectivity to mobile phones and websites. They're not meant to. That's why you place a platform like Amplitude in between the consumer and the warehouse to get the best of both worlds. Once Amplitude learns something new about the consumer, it informs the data cloud and lets them know to change that information about the audience and the behavioral attributes that we've observed through the experiment, through product analytics. And that does Snowflake in this example very well because it's already activating out to the multi-channel on the right. And so these can work hand in hand. In fact, I found it to be an easier path in my personal experience when the data cloud already has that single source of truth ready to share back in a bi-directional fashion with our Amplitude digital analytics platform. So let's talk about pros and cons of doing things this way. It's never a silver bullet. But you'll find that benefits and cost reduction will happen almost immediately. When you choose to consolidate a product analytics, probably several product analytics tools and personalization tools that you're using, I've seen anywhere from 3 to 10 in some of the bigger brands, but even the SMB market has a couple. The idea is to use one so that you can not only optimize the license fee, but reduce costs and labor. Too often, when we use freeware to do things, there's a cost to that freeware. You have to train people constantly, right? And so that's something that we don't typically see in the larger enterprise. We see them consolidating down to one platform that reduces complexity. It streamlines your process as well. And so there's going to be subjective things that you can actually measure, time spent in ramping up on some of these tools. And then obviously from a security perspective, we didn't really consider this before the rise of data privacy regulations. But man, when you have data in a single place where you can push the delete button in response to a request for erasure, either through GDPR or CCPA, and trust that that data will no longer proliferate throughout your organization, that in and of itself, Gartner has quoted that costing $1,500 per request. And so that's coming. So the ability to have that hub spoke model that I spoke about, where you can take action on data and rest assured that your channels will recognize that the impact immediately in real time, is absolutely mandatory. So you'll see a big benefit in operational ROI from that. Less training we've already spoken about, and reallocating resources. The money that you save in your budget from having to have 5 or 6 different vendors all working together to feed your data cloud, if you can get that down to 1 or 2, obviously you can reallocate personnel and have them work on innovation. And so that the opportunity cost is something that you'll find as a benefit. And of course, there's going to be risks. This requires change. And it's not only immediate change when you move to these platforms that you saw in the earlier slides, it's the constant change. Be prepared for change and embrace it. Having that data chaotically moving around in the omnichannel, people presenting you with different identities that you'll have to track and link and stitch together causes you to reallocate how you look at things in your organization when you're doing data management. And so the lack of organizational buy-in is going to rear its head. There's going to be people who want to use their familiar tools. But for the good of the business, we're going to standardize on a few of them that work, that make sense, and that are cost effective. And the last thing I'll say about this, I've heard good arguments for buying one monolithic application that you can spend 10, 15, 20 million dollars on that does everything. In a sense, that simplifies a lot of things. But usually that risk is mitigated when you see some of the innovation that we have coming out, especially in the last couple of years in campaign management and personalization tools, and even just AI-based engineering has completely changed the game. I've seen the reliance on the marketing stacks and the data stacks become less and less prominent because we can stitch together a composable solution that makes sense simply by starting with a warehouse, relying on unified analytics, and using the free API connectors that we see inherent in most applications today. A stack really isn't necessary in that regard. And you can see it from Amplitude's perspective. Look at all these wonderful logos. That's what I typically see on client sites. Tons of different experience analytics tools that you see on the left. Web and product analytics in the middle. And sometimes the same platform does indeed serve both of them, but not usually all three. As you can see in the middle, customer profiles, governance, and personalization, that's hard to do when you put it all together and rely on one stack. It usually raises your costs. And then last but not least, the measurement, the experimentation, understanding the efficacy of your digital marketing and your ad tech motions in combination with product-led growth strategies that you can only get by experimenting on A/B testing or hypothesis testing. Amplitude brings all four of these together at a price point that allows us to pay as you go, a consumption-based model. And that's fairly innovative for the industry. A lot of the old marketing stacks won't look at things the same way. So consider this, pick your winners in each of these segments and move forward with that consolidation. Some of the results and outcome to make you confident that you're heading towards a bright spot when you follow this strategy. Look for these four things: scaling data access and insight across the organization. I brought up these because some of them aren't typically tangible, right? What does it mean to give access to data in a secure and compliant fashion, where we can use the buzzword that we're a data-driven organization now? It means increasing and focusing the efficiency of data literacy. Have everybody call the data points that define your customer the same thing. Make it easy on them to scale the understanding of reporting and analytics so that eventually you can automate. When you have a different nomenclature and lexicon in three different business units, you're forever going to have fractured data. Unify the access, but unify the nomenclature at the same time, and you'll find that the outcome is positive. Driving business efficiency, decreasing time to customer value has never been more important. As we said, the zero consumer, as quoted by McKinsey, has zero patience. You stand to lose a lot of brand and market share if you can't respond in real time. And you're always going to have to be innovating. If there's one thing we've learned in the last 6 months to a year, AI is moving faster than we can and we can adapt to. So we need to focus more investment on innovating and driving business efficiency through automation. And that'll build loyalty. That outcome, you'll see it in your metrics for churn. You should see a decrease in churn in real time as it happens in measuring and linked to your campaigns in marketing or in product-led growth. You should also be taking surveys, what we call zero-party data. Reach out to your consumer, ask them what they want, ask them what makes their experience better. There's no better data that you get when you simply ask for it instead of trying to mine it from different websites and so forth. And so as you see increases in MAUs, monthly active users, you should be able to trace the efficiency of your strategy using that. And then finally, your market share obviously will grow. At Amplitude, we've seen our brands who have combined their product-led growth strategy and their marketing strategies together as taking anywhere from 1% to 3% more market share just in the early days of 2023 till present day right now. When you do that and you use the same data, you're operating far more rapidly than your competitors. And as a result, you've built more loyalty, decreased churn, and naturally have increased your market share. And so those are the outcomes you should be expecting from a unified strategy of a first-party nature such as this. Last thing I'll say, the other way that we measure value and outcomes is through total cost of ownership. Hey, that sounds great. This guy's telling us to unify data, work as a single team, serve all business units the same way, but what's it going to cost, right? That's got to be the biggest part of the new revolution in software as a service. Cost became the preeminent means in which you understand how far you should automate, how far you should actually build it yourself or do nothing at all. And so you see the categories on the left, the license fee, the adoption rate, right? Is it costing you a lot in training or not? Can you hire an agency to take care of this at a lower price? The implementation, are we constantly implementing, debugging? Are we stalling our campaigns because we're not ready? The maintenance. And then consumption. Are you measuring how often people are using this? We do with Amplitude. We measure who's on the product at all times, what they're going, what they're clicking on. And from that, we can be quantitative with this metric of consumption and say, hey, we're playing the game of attention. The more time, the more attention that our consumers spend on our app, the more generally we monetize from them. How's that going? Is it trending up and to the right? Or if you're in retail, consumption means transactions. If you're Amazon, you're not necessarily wanting people to stay on your app for hours and hours. In fact, you'd like them off the app as soon as possible. That, to me, tells me that my retail data flow and workflow is working for me. They're in and out, and right away they've got their product and moving on. So transactions is the game you're playing there. And if you're a B2B business, that consumption is going to be measured on productivity. What are they doing in your app? If you're selling a CRM and they're only coming in for an hour but not really doing much, that indicates churn. That's not going to last. But if they're accomplishing a lot of use cases that you see, the dozens of use cases in CRMs, and they have a wide variety of these accomplishments, you can rest assured that your trend is up to the right. So we call that the North Star strategy, measuring productivity, measuring attention, and measuring transactions depending what vertical you're in. And last but not least, integration. I can't stress this enough. It's going to change. The tools you buy today will likely change in 1 or 2 years because something new and exciting will come out. A lot of vendors will keep up, and you make the right bets with the right vendor and they stay innovative and stay there. That's great. You can hold on to them, but all around them will change. And so we need integrations. We need to take that seriously. And frankly, the most successful ones that I've seen are the ones that are visual. If we can point and click to our data blueprint and bring it up inside the integration, instead of hand coding it, you're going to have a winning solution there. So these all have a weighted score. You'll have it differently in your brand as well. But these are the kinds of things that our clients think about when they measure the strategy and the efficacy of it. And last but not least, the measuring growth. We've had a few customers that have shared the results that they've seen with the Amplitude strategy in data unification and combining experimentation and analytics together. And you can see some of these are big logos like Dropbox and Autodesk, 65,000 orders per week driven from recommendation at Anheuser-Busch, 200% increase in mobile conversion rates at NerdWallet. PayPal and Walmart are also seeing increases in that area too. DoorDash, Adidas, Intuit, 20% reductions in customer churn. Those brands saw it too. And then last, the financial ones like GoFundMe, Capital One, GDV increasing with new sharing experience. When they love the experience of your property and the tests that you do are relevant and improve that experience, you get free marketing, you get earned media. And that's really the gold standard for measuring those new revenue streams. Thank you for listening. We went through that quickly. I'll take any questions that the audience might have.
Yeah, that was great. And there are certainly lots of questions. And you know what? We've done a lot of events with a lot of folks and fielded a lot of questions. And one of the ones that seems to come over and over again, because everybody's doing something, right? Everybody has something, and most of the time they've put a lot of thought into it, and they feel like they've got something that works reasonably well.
Yeah.
So what do you say to folks who have taken the time to invest and been thoughtful and conscientious about the tool sets that they've built, but they also recognize, you know what, maybe they've put a few too many coats of paint on that wall at this point, and maybe it's time to strip and get back down to the bare wood. I mean, what do you say to somebody who's kind of facing something as dramatic as that?
Yeah, it's a tough call, because usually those layers of paint, I love the analogy, Doug. They're not only about the technology. It's not only about the tech. It's about the process and the people that happen too. So when you have multiple technologies, you build up multiple processes shared by multiple teams. And so to make a decision on a technology means literally affecting the personnel count in your organization. So it's a much bigger topic of, hey, this vendor doesn't have the latest and greatest stuff anymore. Let's go with this vendor. We're doing proof of concept on it. I agree that vendors should step up, and I think with the recent capabilities in composable architectures, the ability to drag and drop literally of vendor technology into your stack with relatively minor pain to get it working. We have to be prepared as employees, as people, and the process has to be flexible enough for that kind of change. I see the pain happening when moving from a massive marketing stack to a decomposed stack. I also see it the other way around. Hey, we've got 25 tools. They work awesome. And Sally, Joe, and Rick, they've been here for 20 years, and that's why. But then Sally, Joe, and Rick retire, and nobody knows how to run this stuff. And so I see it going the other way. Then brands spend a lot of money on a massive stack, and they said, we can't do that anymore. That's not scalable. There's really no right or wrong answer to that. You've got to take a look at your own organization and the culture that you've built around your data-driven practices and understand where your risks are. If you have too much technology, that's not necessarily a bad thing, as long as there's no overlap. And so once we take stock of that, then we bring in the cost and say, is this feasible for the organization for the future? Should we keep spending? The case might be that you should be. I've seen a lot of clients who spend way too much money on their tech stack, but the revenues are much higher. So I don't want to give a one size fits all for that question. It'll depend, but typically the enterprises today, they're decomposing the intelligence of data from the actual storage of that data. That's the first step. Have it live somewhere like a data cloud independently. Technology nowadays, we can access that data in the data cloud without copying it into the other tools. That in and of itself will drive ROI, and you can take it from there. The vendors that have warehouse native technology capabilities are going to be the winners in the future.
Yeah, again, we've seen a thing or two, and I'm old enough to remember when we first launched Solutions Review and how much resistance there was to moving to the cloud.
Yeah.
And honestly, it felt like there was just way too much senior resistance for all the reasons why senior people became senior, right? They were making, again, conscientious decisions about their data. But as we've seen things evolve and technologies evolve and the security around those technologies, you now have these incredible cloud data solutions that where people are now happily leveraging, which leads to it's almost like it's almost like there's a moment now with things moving so rapidly that there's almost a paralysis that can happen, where you see so much happening that you don't know. It's like, I'll use another analogy. It's like getting onto a highway from a standing start. It's that things are moving so fast. It feels dangerous to just jump in and try to go 0 to 60 without, causing a little bit of risk. So how do you help people think about that? I mean, where should they be kind of thinking? Because they really do need to be thinking years downstream now, as they start to organize against the new technology. And as we look at what's happening, 5 years from now is going to be a whole new world. I mean, how does Amplitude think about that as a risk that you need to mitigate?
Well, I mean, Amplitude has a lot of plans in its roadmap for the coming years, and AI is a fundamental aspect of that. We believe that in the future, not only our product, many products will be self-healing, self-automating, self-managing. That's easy to kind of predict. I mean, these are routine tasks that people do that can be codified. So to double down on a technology that promises to do that is akin to going from 0 to 100 right off the bat, because you haven't learned about your data. I think the way to get off track is to buy into the message that all you have to do is automate data collection, make sure it's safe in a warehouse, and away you go. Start doing the same thing that you did before. Collect, enrich, activate. 3 things. I believe there's 4. I believe in between collect and enrichment, call a timeout and take the time to learn what you're gathering, because it's changing. And that's not something the robots can do for you, right? AI is not going to learn something new right off the bat. It needs evidence, right? There's going to be limitations to the large language models that are basing their recommendations off what they know. You have to teach this algorithm. And so the human part isn't going away. What's going away is the manual processes that take so long to do, the haphazard political decisions that drive our decisions to throw out one technology and bring in another. That's the stuff that's got to go away. And so when you start to build a data-driven culture, a true data-driven culture, you have to take the time with data. Take the part in marketing. We're now moving away from buying third-party data, giving it to Google and saying, oh, look at that, I got a 4.0 ROAS. That's better than the industry average. It's not good enough anymore, right? First-party data strategies, they start off very, very small, the tranche of data. And we're used to having all this reach because we bought, $50,000 worth of data from Google. Well, no longer. Now we only have this much. So the precision, on the other hand, of first-party data is 100%. We know exactly who we're dealing with. We've actually run tests on them. But our reach normally is very low. Give it time. That first-party data tranche will grow and grow as you hit your metrics in your North Star strategy and you reduce churn and you increase acquisition at a lower cost per lead. That'll grow. And then get ready to share. With some of these data clean rooms and these retail media networks that are attached to them, you're going to find that you have like brands and partnership opportunities to add to your first-party data tranche with new insights off your brand, off your strategy. You're going to learn from Hulu and Disney and Best Buy and Alaska Airlines. They'll teach you something about your consumer that you never knew, and it will be consented, compliant data. And so have faith in that and get ready to invest some time in that, and you will benefit from that spend.
Yeah, and we encourage everybody whenever we present solutions and best practices to reach out and engage with the solutions that we highlight, because ultimately we know that that they've kind of crossed over a threshold of established credibility. I mean, you can take a look at obviously your customer base is littered with name brands, big name brands.
That's right.
On your website, again, if you're going to engage, you're going to see at Amplitude lots of things, but one of the things you're going to see is a Get Started button.
Yeah.
And so walk us through that a little bit. I mean, again, if we're going to ask folks to engage, how do they go about it, and what are they going to be getting themselves into, and what are they going to get out of that process?
Well, you're going to get a direct connection to someone who understands your needs. So just like any other vendor, we're listening to our digital property. We take that seriously. What people are looking at, how much they choose, how much information they choose to give us gets attached to a profile, so we can be proactive in working with you. Today's consumer is probably 80% educated by the time they hit your website. I remember the days when we'd jump in a car and drive over, and it'd be the first time that these clients had heard about our technology, and we got to call the shots. Those days are over. The consumer today is highly educated. So we want to get right to business with Get Started. We want to get your contact info. We want to show you our solution. We want to gather your requirements, and we want to communicate a path to value. We don't look at our technology as a silver bullet. We want to learn about your strategy, and hopefully we have good suggestions with our account executives and our solution consultants. We've heard it all before, and we have methods and methodologies and templates to follow that we can get you started right away. Amplitude is about turning this thing on, have self-service analytics get you the information you need within minutes, not weeks, and then proving that. That's why our pricing model is flexible enough that we serve some of the smallest companies in the world all the way to some of the biggest. You mentioned it yourself, Doug. We've got some of the biggest names in the Fortune 500, but I'm also proud of the thousands of customers that we have that aren't in the Fortune 500. That shows that we understand business and we understand every vertical. So hit that get started button. We understand your needs. We're an analytics tool, obviously, and we're experimenting, but we've got a lot of intelligence to share with you across the globe on some of the biggest issues in the first-party data strategy, the multi-channel, privacy regulations, and measurement especially.
Yeah, I got to believe that your internal marketing meetings are chock full of hard facts and statistics from using your own solution, which I think is excellent.
We do it well. They're a great team, actually. They give us a lot of ideas out in the field.
One question that we always get is how do you handle the support? You know, how do you help people kind of get better than they already are, right? I mean, part of working with a new solution provider is not just the fact that the technology is a little more whiz bang, but it's that there's a little more knowledge and savvy. Where does that come into play for the folks that you're working with?
Yeah, and it's a great question because it differentiates us to what I said earlier before about the freeware. You can log on and go to Google and grab a data collection technology for free. You can look at their community help and learn a little bit about yourself, about your brand and what you need for free. But you can't get something for nothing in this world. We all know that. That comes at a cost. We don't believe in that model. We do have online documentation, a community of users that help each other. That's obviously table stakes nowadays. But we complement that not only with internal resources like customer success managers, expert professional services, and then also an attentive account executive team. We don't believe in after we sell, we walk away. We follow the modern bow tie funnel of selling. We're there from you right after conversion, and we want loyalty. We want you to be customers for a very long time, and that costs money. That costs our company an investment of people. And so we believe in that. We have that. And I won't go without mentioning our wonderful partners too. We partner with some of the best in the world today that understand our technology, and align it with their methodology for even bigger strategies beyond what I've mentioned today. We have a nice fit with companies like that. And so we, all the regular players like Publicis and Ernst & Young and Accenture and BlastX here in the United States, these are all organizations that have been there, done that before, especially with first-party data. Hey, those things have been around for over 10 years now. And so if you find the right company that has experience in delivering those, you're going to be successful. It's the new startups that you're going to find challenges with. We're a public company now, and we went through that, so we know what we're talking about there. It's a challenge. I think you're going to find a mix of both. You're going to want an Amplitude, but you're also going to want some of the newer players in other areas and then use your expertise as you learn from some of the more established vendors such as Amplitude to help yourself in some of those new innovations that you're building. So a little bit of both. We're using partners. We have our own in-house staff that helps do that. And of course, we follow that loyalty-based continuous improvement cycle. That's our culture here at Amplitude. We want to be here for the long term.
What advice would you offer to somebody who's seen this event, they are intrigued about Amplitude, and they want to reach out, but don't feel necessarily like they might have all their ducks in a row, if you will? I mean, how would somebody prep to get the most out of, a potential trial or point of, or proof of concept?
I think, that goes back to the reason why I joined this company. In the last, 2 decades, I've seen so many projects fail, especially the customer data platforms. You work for a company that sells one of these CDPs. You shake hands. Thank you for being a customer. Here's your CDP. Great. First question they have is, all right, what should we track? What audience should we build? And we're like, I don't know. You're the business. We're missing the learning. That's why I joined Amplitude. That's why I'm passionate about this company. You should be able to purchase a product. And if you put in the effort to track the data on your properties and follow the unified lexicon, and you put in that 6 to 8 weeks of time, it doesn't take much. That technology should run in autopilot and say, here's what you got. Here's what I saw. Here's where I think it's going. Here are the attributes. Here's the intent, the affinity. It shouldn't be something that we force our clients to think about. That's what our technology does. We're the precursor to actually building the use case, which is what's been missing in this industry for over 10 years in CDPs. Nobody knows what to build. They need help. You need to discover and spend the time learning, and it doesn't take a lot. That's what Amplitude does. So come to us with questions. Don't come convinced of your strategy, because I got to tell you, I've never, including myself, met someone who's 100% right on what use cases they should run. They're always pleasantly surprised by what they find on their digital properties. We're the tool that will surface those insights to you in seconds by pushing a button, by asking the AI for help. That's what we do. And I think having tools like this leads and cascades the value down to a better data cloud, a better warehouse, a better relationship with your multi-channel. Where should I be spending money? Maybe not on Amazon Prime this week, but certainly next week, because the AI told me so, thanks to the insights I learned. So come with questions and come with an open mind, and you'll find that you get the best experience with a company like mine in Amplitude.
Yeah, great advice, and very much appreciated. Again, we encourage everybody to always engage. I think your situation is always going to be unique, and there's really no way for you to truly understand the real benefit that you'll get from a new solution until you reach out and engage and have that more detailed, specific conversation. So amplitude.com, by all means, take a visit there. Ted, this has been very helpful for me and a great presentation. Thanks very much for the time today, and best of luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you so much, Doug, and thanks for having me, and thank you to the audience for attending. It's been my pleasure.
Well, there you have it, another solution in our spotlight. We want to thank Ted and Amplitude for that presentation, and we appreciate your attendance as well. Until next time, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review. Thanks for watching.
If your business would like to be featured in a future event, contact us today.